Penn State football reaching a critical stage on the way to the second half of the season. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. With me today is Nate Bauer. He is our senior editor at Blue White Illustrated, and yesterday we had the opportunity to go to practice and check out what was there, and we had a bit of a surprise in the form of number 14 for Penn State, Sean Clifford, practicing with his team for all the media to see, and Nate was there with me. So, Nate, where do you want to start in that particular conversation? Because obviously we're going to start with Sean Clifford. What stood out to you when you watched Clifford throwing the football?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm more interested in hearing your thoughts than mine. It looked right to me. I don't know how else to put it. He looked like Sean Clifford. I mean, he was the passes were crisp. He seemed to move well. And you saw a little bit of everything, right? I mean, it was yeah, he's running the ball, he's handing the ball off, and he's making all of the throws. To me, that if I'm doing a little bit of mental math here, and we're all making some presumptions about a rib injuries, what have you, but something in that area of the body, for him to be able to make the passes that he was making, you would think that it couldn't be that serious of an injury, right? Like if you have cracked ribs or broken ribs, or especially broken ribs, those movements that you're showing in this video right now don't align. That doesn't add up necessarily, that you would be able to do that pain-free, or that really the Penn State would put him out there if he was anything less than if there was any doubt as to his ability to do it. So no, I don't know. I mean, I think the comment that I made to you that I will maintain is there was no risk of him being hit.
Yeah.
There was no, right, like that.
Yeah. So
even
in a practice sense, which I think is a fair point.
Right. And so because of that, if I had to make a bet as to whether or not what I saw today means that he can play on Saturday, I flatly wouldn't make a bet. I would just abstain. I'm not. Yeah. I wouldn't go in either direction. I think that there are some elements about the way that he left the game at Iowa, unable to return, that make this something of a miraculous recovery if he is able to return for Illinois. If he's able to start for Illinois, that to me is a very impressive and quick turnaround, regardless of what the injury is. Just because that it was serious enough for him to not be able to return in the first place. But bottom line here, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. So until those things, find some crystallization or clarity, then I think, we're all just playing armchair doctor a little bit here.
Yeah, and to answer your original comment, I'm our intrepid photojournalist gathering all of that video for you. So when I'm at practice, I see nothing. Like I am absolutely, because I am not an expert journalist when it comes to gathering video. So I'm not necessarily paying attention to his throwing motion or any of those things. Watching the video back, you're right. I don't see any impingement in his movement. I don't really see anything about his throwing motion that seems off. Sean's always had an interesting arm to begin with. Like, I know that it is not in the classical sense of strong, right? But I've never seen him struggle to hit any particular throw due to a lack of velocity. So there are a couple throws where if he doesn't get into it, then maybe it sails a little bit, and that happens anyway. So gauging that level is I think, a little bit silly when we're watching practice and warm-ups and things like that. So yeah, I would agree with what you said as far as everything looked right. But when we're watching the individual periods, and this is something James Franklin talked about, of when they're talking about who's getting starter reps, when they're actually practicing the plays, Sean Clifford was. What was the situation? What did he say about how they're splitting reps between Clifford, Roberson, and Veilleux, who is now in the conversation as well?
Yes. So he said that it was a third, a third, a third, which suggests a flat, even split, right? However, our good buddy and colleague Ryan Snyder, good on him for this, was keeping track. And he said that Clifford actually did have an edge in the total reps that he took. He counted them. So,
I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he takes all those photos that you're going to see here in a minute and is able to count reps, but that's pretty impressive.
And has his finger on the pulse of recruiting. He's an incredible person. No, but I mean, this is the danger that we find every week. In these situations is like, how much do you read into these things? How much do you actually take away from them?
Yeah.
And so for me right now, I think that if I'm being completely forthcoming and honest, I'm going to say that my presumption last week during the bye and coming out of the Iowa game was that Sean Clifford would not be playing against Illinois. At minimum, that he would not be playing against Illinois. Have I changed my opinion for the long term that this does not appear to be a month-long injury? Sure. I think that I'm totally on board with that this isn't something that's going to drag on extensively. Like sometimes these guys have high ankle sprains and it looks like they might be back and they might be okay and they practice. But
how many times did we see Noah Cain in 2019 practicing with the Penn State offense? And that is when we're watching, when we got to see those periods, we were seeing some live reps or some actual walkthroughs, and he was practicing with the team and then he didn't play in any games. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So this does not appear to be that, but also who knows? Who knows? I mean, I think that certainly there were reasons for optimism for Penn State. If you're a Penn State fan and you see the video that you've been putting up and you see the reports coming out of practice on Wednesday, certainly I think there are reasons to believe that this is not something that's going to drag into November, which is critical, right? Like we're all talking. Illinois obviously matters. Penn State has to find a way to win this game with or without Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford at 100% or not at 100%. But Ohio State's the game that we're all thinking about. And
I think that's the point too. That so my inside source, my inside information, which by the way, I know I'm doing a terrible ham-fisted job of this, is Nate. When we talked about this stuff, we kind of came to the same conclusion independently, and we also were kind of on the same timeline when it came to these injuries that we were speculating about, and then we continue to speculate about. I think that is what you just said there is the point, is that maybe or maybe not. Like it is a miracle's chance that he'll play versus Illinois. I would put that on the outside of the odds, but it firmly puts in the availability and the ability for Sean Clifford to play against Ohio State. And I think that part is the critical element of what we're talking about with Sean Clifford. Maybe not this week, and I think most fans are also okay with him sitting for this game, right? Tom Hannafin on the Pay Dirt podcast on our post-game show after the Iowa game was openly lobbying to sit everyone, even if they were healthy, like Jaquan Brisker doesn't play against Illinois. So it's not like the thought isn't out there, and I was not on board with that, as far as like I don't think that's a realistic strategy that you could go with and still be but it seems like that might be what's happening, is like Sean Clifford maybe could go, but if he's not healthy and he's not going to be cleared to play, then you have a great reason to not play a guy that could re-injure something against a team that you have a 23-point spread on already.
Look, I can acknowledge that Illinois has not had a good season, and I can acknowledge that that's a program that has real challenges, right? Like, I mean, Let's be totally upfront about this. However, and I feel like I'm in the minority here, that spread has to be with Sean Clifford presumed playing, because I saw an offense at Iowa, and granted, again, Iowa's defense and Illinois' defense are two different animals. But Penn State's offense was dysfunctional against Iowa, right?
Yes.
It was not simply that Iowa was dictating the style of play, right? That Iowa just won all of those one-on-ones and won all of those battles. No. That was a Penn State offense that could not get the snap off, that could not do it without false starts. So to me, again, like, I get that there is some inherent advantages for Penn State in this game. Defensively, special teams, for sure. Those are things that Penn State can rely on as crutches to stabilize them and help them to get a win. However, you have got to score points to win the game. You have got to get, like, somewhere.
The good news is, at full strength, I think the Illinois offense is still about as functional. Like, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious here, because they do have a good run game, they do have good running backs, but like, as holistically, I was a little, like, I had to go ooh when I was watching the film of the Illinois offense. It is really, really bad. It tainted my view of the defense, is how bad it was. I just assumed they were going to match that and be as bad, and they aren't.
Somebody asked in the mailbag that we had on Wednesday about whether or not Penn State's defense was going to shut out another team that's left on the schedule.
I asked that question too.
and my argument is that you need to have, yes, it can be a great defensive performance. That is true. However, even Indiana, which couldn't do anything offensively, will get the ball into your side of the field occasionally. It is exceedingly rare for an offense to not at least once or twice move into field goal range. And this is a long way around of me saying the same thing, which is, you better get to 7.
Somebody in this game has to get to 7.
Somebody's got to get to 7, because Illinois is probably going to get to 6. Like, there's a pretty good chance of that happening, regardless of how bad Illinois' offense is, or how good Penn State defense is.
Please tell people more how entertaining this game is going to be. Please keep going about how much they should watch this and then watch the post-game show here on YouTube. Oh, boy.
Go to the library, read a book, go to the beach. Like, there are so many other things that will be less aggravating for you on Saturday as a fan than to watch this game. That is my that's the Nate Bauer pick. That's the Nate Bauer guarantee right there. That this game is going to be abysmal. It will be so awful to watch that give the tickets away. Give them to somebody now while you still have a chance.
Here's my new pitch, because I hear you, and I want to respond with, if you are going to go to the beach in October, sure. You're a brave soul to begin with, but if you're going to be going for a walk in the woods, seeing the fall foliage, make sure roughly 3:30 to 3:45 you tune into YouTube and you watch the BWI Live post-game show, and I'll tell you all about it. I will condense 3.5 hours of hitting your head on a wall into something entertaining from 45 minutes to 55, maybe 60 minutes. So that's going to be the trade-off. I will save you 3.5 hours if you watch my show post-game.
I will be tuning in. I promise.
You have to watch it either way. You have to be at the game.
Yeah, these are the ones where it's not fair.
This is the tax for having indoor seating at Beaver Stadium and the media food.
And a career that, people, it always comes back to this, is like, oh, dude, like, how can you possibly complain about watching football? this is the one time. This is it.
This is the conversation too that we've had this week with people want to know more about Christian Veilleux, and what do you say? What do you say about this when we're still learning about Taquan Roberson, and some of James Franklin's comments, I think this week, say more about Taquan than they would about Christian when it comes to the fact that the gap has narrowed between the two, is kind of how he phrased it on Tuesday during his weekly press conference, and that you have some questions about why that be for a guy that's been in the program for 3 years. With James' comments in general, and then that situation, are you going to see which one do you think we're going to see? Because my thought is it's going to be Taquan. It's going to be Taquan Roberson. But do you think that there is, at this point, is this a motivational tactic or is this a real thing?
I think it's a real thing. I just look. I have a separate question that I think demonstrates the point. Is what did you learn about Sean Clifford in the second half of the 2020 season as a quarterback?
The second half of the season in 2020?
Yep.
Not a lot.
Correct. Why?
Because the whole situation was, I think, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word on air, but you know kind of where I'm going with that. It was Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. How about that?
What did they want to do offensively? What was the point for Sean Clifford as the quarterback in the second half of 2020?
Right. We're going to run the ball, don't turn the ball over, screen game, give it to Jahan Dotson on the perimeter. Yes. Yeah, I get what you're saying now.
And so for me, it's almost like, not that it doesn't matter who the quarterback is if it's not Sean Clifford. It does matter who the quarterback is, but I think the way that James Franklin phrased it Wednesday night was talking about the changes in the offense and how it will look different. And I mean, he almost gasped laughing. Like, yeah, of course we want Sean Clifford to be available. Like, it dynamically changes the offense, because what they're talking about, and this is in real terms, are finding the 10 plays that Christian Veilleux is comfortable running.
Yeah.
Right? Like, these are the 5 red zone plays that Taquan Roberson is comfortable running.
Yep.
And trying to narrow those down and get into a place where, as a play caller for Mike Yurcich, that you don't feel this abject sense of dread that you're asking your quarterback to do more than he's capable of doing.
So I think this is a really important point that people don't really want to give credence to. Everything you just said and everything that James Franklin talked about last night of finding the plays that Taquan Roberson is comfortable with. You kind of think those might be different than the ones that Sean Clifford is comfortable with. And that is really, I think, when you want to go back and review the post-mortem on what was going on, and this is what I said in real time after the game and then in my film analysis, is the ones that you're going to be comfortable with Sean Clifford are fifth-year senior, graduate level, on his way to the next level sort of plays, like from a mental standpoint. Taquan Roberson should be more advanced than he was. He should be able to complete passes in underneath zone coverage, because it's not, I mean, if he hasn't picked that part up, then okay, that's the conversation we're having this week. But he was not going to be finding the hole in cover 3 down the field in stride with a receiver he hasn't thrown the ball to in 2 weeks, because he's not the starter. You're not going to be able to diagnose an inverted cover 2 and then all of a sudden be able to check it down to the swing pass and you're not going to get to those things. But right. You should be able to get to some of them. And you should have some of those things that you're able to do. And I think that's been the goal over the last week and a half, is to craft that game plan for Taquan. And I would say, hope to God that a good number of those plays cross over with what Christian Veilleux's comfortable with at this point, which, as you just pointed out, is probably even more limited.
Yeah, I there's one thing that, because I hear it, I get the Roberson critiques and what the expectations are, but there is a missing piece of this equation, in that Taquan Roberson And for most of Penn State's developmental players last year, first of all, he was the third string quarterback. Okay. So the top two played, the third one doesn't exist as far as that's concerned. In football, third string quarterback doesn't matter most of the time. It's not getting any reps. And then beyond that, it was just a developmental year wash for most of those guys. So he was hurt a little bit last year. James Franklin said that in one of his press conferences towards the end of the season. So, I mean, I struggle being too hard on him based on, basically just what happened at Iowa. I don't think that that's a fair or accurate representation necessarily of where he is developmentally. But certainly, if he plays on Saturday, the expectations and the hopes for Penn State fans and from the media and for himself, I'm sure, and his teammates are that he will be able to put together a better performance, in more advantageous circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's more than fair. You didn't say anything about my haircut, Nate. Got a haircut. You didn't say anything.
Beautiful. It's
nice.
My wife claims that I'm not perceptive, so you're just added to the list, buddy.
I have I get the cool I think I get the cool guy fade, so I got the beard and then the fade up to the hair. Now it'd be cooler if I didn't have, I have very curly hair, so it doesn't really always work out. But go ahead.
I mean, look at this. Look at
this. High priority for Nate Bauer, right?
This is a total disaster. It's almost like March 2020, and I'm gonna have to get the clippers out and just shave it myself.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about, Nate. Is that care about your grooming, care about men's grooming. I don't know. So my wife cuts my hair, and I think she does an awesome job. I got her a salon quality pair of clippers and then scissors. So when she cuts my hair, and when she, believe it or not, sometimes I have to have 2 or 3 glasses of wine and then I'll cut her hair because it's You ever try to cut a woman's hair? It is a terrifying experience. But it can be a little bit a little fun outside of the terror. But my point is, we're using professional equipment.
Sure.
Yeah. You ever try to use that professional equipment on your balls? Not a great plan. Just not a great plan. You should have the proper tool for any situation. That's what my grandfather always taught me growing up on the farm and other folksy things to say. Have the proper tool, and Manscaped is the proper tool for your down under. I now have the proper tool after years of not. I've gone through all kinds of grooming equipment to use, and I finally got to use the Lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped. And you see the promo code below, 20BlueWhite. They are a sponsor here of the show. Support for the BWI Daily Edition from Manscaped. I'm one of the first people to try the 4.0. I'm blown away by the performance, craftsmanship, and detail are next level. It was so nice that it had the travel lock, and I was like, oh no, I already broke this thing. And no, it was just on travel lock. You actually have to read the instructions how to use it. It has an LED light, so you can see where you're going. So when you're doing one of these moves, you can see what's going on. It's perfect. New multifunction on-off switch can engage with the travel lock, which I mentioned, and create for people who like to travel like Nate, so it doesn't turn on in your bag in the airport. All kinds of great stuff. And did I mention, this is the coolest thing. I've never had a wireless charging anything. It charges without, so there's no plug in it. You can use it in the rain. It could be a snowstorm. Bad idea, but you can use it anywhere. It's waterproof because it's wireless charging, and it's super dope. It looks really cool. It feels cool in your hand. It's nice to use. So get 20% off free shipping with the code 20BlueWhite. You see that at the bottom of the screen if you're listening on the podcast. 20BlueWhite at manscaped.com. That's code 20BlueWhite at manscaped.com. And of course, 1 second. Get 20% off free shipping, and I'll give you the code one more time, 20 Blue White, manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. 20 Blue White is the code. Unlock your confidence, and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
You didn't tell me that this should be filled with vodka.
I don't know what you're talking about. I nailed that. That was awesome.
Crushed
that
it.
was better than my last one, which we did.
You mowed right through it. It's wonderful.
Should I just just because we're gonna be doing this again? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I told you my mom listens to this.
Well, does she need Manscaped? Use the promo code 20 Blue White, Mrs. Bauer. 20
Terrible.
Blue White.
Move on. Awful.
Other situations that are interesting coming out of Wednesday's practice, the running back situation as a whole, I think good and bad for Penn State, is always fascinating and one that we are constantly asking and talking about and getting questions about from people over at Blue White Illustrated. So what was your takeaway from Wednesday night? What did you see from the running backs?
I saw two prominent running backs not there.
Yee.
That's what I saw. Obviously, John Lovett, transfer from Baylor, was he left the game early, I think, against Iowa and did not return. And Devin Ford, who started the game at Iowa, did not return. And neither of those guys, at least to my eye, were in attendance at practice on Wednesday. So, certainly that changes the dynamic, I think, a little bit of, what that position looks like. It's always tricky because we talked before this season about how 5 is too many, right?
Yeah.
And so then you get into it and you lose 2 in one game. And what does that mean for them moving forward? So, and again, what does it mean for them moving forward at a position where no one had really asserted themselves into taking the job over completely? So I'm not sure. Noah Cain was the guy who was getting the first snaps, and Kevon Lee obviously was right behind him, but without Ford and Lovett, it becomes a little more tricky for them in terms of, I think there's a counter argument to what I'm saying in that if you don't have those other guys to put in the game, maybe the first two find a rhythm,
they work it out a little bit,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe you get a few more reps. I think that we're anticipating a dumbed down is not necessarily the way that I want to put it, but a simplified,
streamlined
offensive approach.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case in this game and you're playing field position and you just look, they want to win this game. That's it.
Yeah.
Get out of here alive and move on to the next.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, maybe it gives those guys an opportunity a little bit, especially because even if Sean Clifford plays, I don't know what your expectation would be, but mine would be that his running would be limited. That he would not.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I'm a little bit of two minds there. Obviously, you're going to be cautious of that, but if you're Mike Yurcich, I don't believe that you're going into the game and you want to have any reservations about that. It's 3rd and 1, or we can hit him if we get this, but I can't use that play. I think if he can't do those things, then he doesn't play. I guess that's kind of where I would lean to. Either he's all in or he's all out, and it would have to be a really big game for him to not see that. And even what we saw 2019, where he came into the game after the Minnesota game where he was injured, went into the Ohio State game not 100%, and re-injured something, because when he plays, he plays. And I don't think you can stop Sean Clifford from scrambling or running or making those plays in the moment. He's been trained that way for a reason. So it would be very hard, and it would take a very mature player to be able to do that. So I kind of think if he plays, he plays, 100%.
He is a mature player, though. But still, no, I agree. I agree with the sentiment. That's why,
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't see it. It's just very hard for me to believe, for me to put the pieces together and say this guy is worth playing if he's not 100%. But obviously, I mean, we'll see. We'll see on Saturday afternoon where he's at, and then they'll go from there. But as it pertains to the running backs, though, look, they're still trying to find their way offensively and try to get into something resembling cohesiveness, right? I mean, because that's really what it is, and you've been talking about it all season, that it's not like there's this one major deficiency, right? That the offensive line just stinks, or that the running backs just stink, right? It's just putting it all together at the same time.
It kind of thinks,
flashes, but it's just not unified right now.
In a certain way, and this is going to be coming off as maybe I don't even believe the way I'm phrasing this, but like a hard reboot on the offense. If you're saying we're to simplify things, when I was during the bye week and watching things and kind of looking at the 30,000-foot picture and some of the data, I think a simplified running game might help, where they inside outside zone, and then they do a lot of power, counter, and man. So they do everything on the offensive side when it comes to run blocking. It's a diverse run blocking system, and I think that is part of. If I were to say, if that is the part that James Franklin he said before the season, we don't want to lose the things we're good at, so the man blocking is going to stay, and then the inside outside zone that Mike Yurcich brings in, that's going to fold into it. If you just eliminate one or the other, and at this point I don't really care. If you eliminate one bucket, you might be able to become good at the other ones, and then you can add that stuff in as you go.
I can't remember what I've talked about, what I haven't talked about with you, but did I bring up my interview with Yurcich before the season in June when
we talked about it? Yeah.
Like just that he was laying the groundwork that it's not going to happen right away based on NCAA rules. I mean, he was more or less saying, hey, look, it is impossible to simulate a defensive look for the run game. Yeah. And so you have to get it, but passing, you can pass on air, obviously, and all of the 7-on-7 stuff that they do through the course of the summer. Those are invaluable reps. I mean, they can get the passing game cohesive and to a point where it looks like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
The running game is something that he was acknowledging takes time to get to that point, and I think that's what you've seen. But the question is, what was he actually saying in terms of how much time it takes? Was he saying, all right, by week 3, you've been through it enough times that you expect to be in a position to put it together? Because honestly, they did put it together against Ball State. They ran for 240 yards.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there have been moments and opportunities, and certainly I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think it's 87. Like, Illinois is not good defending the run. Like
they're
not
good. So, this is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but this is something that I've talked a little bit about yesterday when I had on Scott Ritchie from Illinois. Brett Bielema's comments to me kind of struck the wrong, so looking at what they do defensively, and he said we don't have the guys up front to run what we want to run and go where we want to go. So this is the system these are the players he inherited from Lovie Smith. It was a 4-down front. The Tampa 2 system is relying on quickness and penetration upfield, and maybe you've got one guy that's a bigger physical body, but everyone else is kind of a pass rusher. That's kind of the system. That's what he inherited. So they're running what Ball State and Villanova ran, and to a degree some of what Wisconsin does, where they fold in what's called a tight front, where everyone's lined up inside the tackles. You don't have the personnel, then don't run it. That's on you, the coach, to make that decision. You get to make those decisions. So that players are playing, their nose tackle gets pushed off the ball on every single play because he's not a nose tackle. And to then throw the players under the bus. And I know what he was trying to say about trying to find the right players for the right system. Like, this isn't the NFL. That kind of bothered me of, well, we don't have the right players. You remember when James Franklin came to Penn State, and this is just the only up close experience I have with it, is when James Franklin came to Penn State, and he wanted to run a particular offense with a certain quarterback, and that guy couldn't run that offense, so they didn't run it.
Yeah.
You have decisions you can make. You have options not to run a system or a scheme. And yeah, they're not great at stopping the run because they're putting their players in bad situations. And to me, that smacks of your system is not the end all be all. Alabama can run any system because they got good players. Yes, any system can work. So find the system that fits your players.
I think that there's an argument to be made, though, that you're considering the first, like, this is something that I've learned through the years. No matter what spin they put on it, every coach considers the first year something of a wash, because you're just trying to create a culture. You're just trying to get these foundational elements. And so teaching new things and in a completely different system to older players is difficult and something that's not going to work in the first place. But that's not the point. The point is to get the younger guys bought in. And
sure, but you also are making those decisions based on, so coaching, and this, Brent Pry said this before, is like, our job is to accentuate their strengths and hide their weaknesses. And I don't think, based on what they're doing, and they've tweaked some things, so they have tweaked some things in their system, and this probably coming off a little bit too harsh of my criticism of Brett Bielema, because that's how this stuff works. But if you're running that particular system that they're trying to run with those players, you're putting them in a position to fail, and then you blame them for failing. That's the part I have a problem with, is like, okay, it's not working, and you can acknowledge it's not working, and we're working through it, but to then just say we don't have the guys to go where we want to go. I mean, I get that you're saying that, and I get why you're establishing the baseline and all of that stuff, but I just didn't like the way that came off. I thought that part was that was not leadership to me.
I get it. The guy, he's got a lot of fans and detractors through the, right? Like, this guy has a reputation himself. So, no, I mean, look, it's no fun. It is no fun. That first year, those first couple of years. And James Franklin would be the first one to tell you that, right? 2014 and 15 were not fun years for Penn State football. And so that's what's going to be so interesting to me with this, with Bielema, is where does Illinois go in year 3, year 4?
Sure.
Because that's the realistic timeline of when the changes that you're trying to implement actually start to come to fruition.
Yeah, and one of the things that they are good at, and he's been classically good at making a team be able to function in this area, is the running game. Without PJ Musfer, first game, I guess they played a full game without him, but like knowing not having him going into this game. Yeah. What are you looking at from that position? And then your question about PJ's availability going forward next year. I thought that was interesting. Does that open the door for him to come back for a 5th year? What are your thoughts on that, and where did you arrive at the end of that conversation with James?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think that I mean, look, like, and you've said this, Mustipher was integral to what Penn State was doing, right? I mean, and that's been a feature of a lot of James Franklin and Brent Pry's defenses, is to have a really, really strong component there. I'm going to call it nose tackle. You call it 2-eye, right?
Yeah, their version of it. Yeah,
you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so
the primary run stuffer is essentially correct. What it is. Yeah.
And so to have that piece that's what everything flows from for this Penn State defense, is to stop the run first and to have that strength right there in the middle of the defense. So to not have him, I can't remember. I think you're the one who actually said it on the podcast the other day, that the benefit for Penn State is that PJ Mustipher's backup is a starter.
Yeah.
Derek Tangelo is going to shift and play PJ Mustipher's position. So, I don't think it's the end of the world by any means, but certainly that's something that Penn State's going to have to adjust to. And, I think that one of the things that James Franklin said on Tuesday is you need to get percentages more from the guys who are already contributing.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, you're not going to be able to put in one guy and expect to be able to duplicate that. You just need to take the veteran leaders that you have, the Jesse Lukettas, the Ellis Brooks, who's playing out of his mind, by the way. The Jaquan Briskers, like, get all of those guys chipping in just a little bit more, and you'll find a way through it. But no, what I asked James Franklin on Tuesday was, whether or not roster management issues like PJ Mustipher come up, like whether or not they get attention during the season from the coaching staff. Because here's the bottom line is, it doesn't really change what you do from a recruiting perspective necessarily. But if PJ Mustipher, if the door is open for him to come back for a fifth year, which James Franklin made very plain that it is, right? Like, if he's recovering from this injury for, I don't know, let's ballpark. If it's an ACL, 9 months, 12 months, right? But certainly 9 months until you get back into that ballpark of being at full strength. If that's the case, then is the NFL this next year, when you've lost a spring OTA, when you've lost a preseason camp, right? And things are less secure. Does that make sense for him? And does that make sense, for Penn State, right? Like, what does Penn State want from that? And I think that I can tell you the answer. And the answer is to get PJ Mustipher back for another season. I mean, I think that Penn State obviously would love it. But again, like, that's a situation that Penn State was not anticipating having, right? You don't anticipate, a guy of Mustipher's character and quality and all the things that he brings to the field being back for another year or getting hurt. But the door is open because of the NCAA bonus year that all of those guys who participated last season, right? They get an extra year of eligibility if they want to take it. And I think
there's the important part of the important point about that is that it would be within the realms of a normal timeline at a university. So it's not like he's going to be coming back for a sixth or a seventh year. It'd be a fifth year. Now, it's 5 full years. It's not like he got a red shirt at any point, but this would sort of be that year where I know he played in 5.01 games, but he was a part of the team for a year and then lost that year to an injury. He was playing himself into a draftable position the way he was performing. And I think that's the biggest thing is, would the NFL care? And that seems callous, but it's true of, like, PJ Mustipher was not a first-round pick. He was not a priority player in the next draft, but he's a very good player that will play and should have a spot in the NFL. So then it becomes about getting the reps on tape and all of that stuff and making sure that you finish strong and all the imperceptible stupid things that come with the draft process. So balancing that, and then if you're going to recover at Penn State and then you play next year, are you going to put worse tape on film for evaluators then when you're coming off an ACL? Because we all know you're not even really healthy to begin with, like when you first get back out on the field. So I felt really bad for him for that particular reason, is it makes that road ahead so difficult and fraught with a lot of unknowns as far as his future of a guy that was on the path to it and just needed to keep doing what he was doing, and he was going to get there. And now I still think he's an NFL player, but when there's 700 guys every year, you become a statistic at a certain point, and that part stinks for a good football player like BJ.
Look, the thing that he has going for him though are all of the other things.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, he checks every single box of a guy that you want in your locker room. And so he will be attractive to somebody at some point. It's just a question of the timeline. That's
Yep.
the biggest thing is what's the timeline for him now? And so, yeah, I mean, this is not like revelatory, but yeah, he's going to have some decisions to make that he didn't have to make previously, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was, okay, when this season ends, that's when you start preparing and go to the NFL. Now it's, what do you want to do? Do you want to come back? Or is that still a path where, you train and you take your chances on the draft and go from there? That's going to be for him and his family to decide.
I always keep you longer than I mean to. And I said this yesterday, or 2 days ago, it's the Nate Bauer Power Hour. And it always ends up being closer to an hour than I mean to. But we just get to talking, and I don't have to take commercial breaks anymore that I did before. So now we had one commercial break, and then we go and we just talk. So Nate, thanks for coming on the show today. Anything else before we wrap up that you want to mention?
No, I mean, I think I want to walk back how horrible the game's going to be. Just, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
it'll be fine.
They'll be wearing the Generations of Greatness uniforms, which I do think are dope. I think those are really cool looking. I normally don't care about uniforms unless they're very bad or they are very cool, and I do think
great.
These ones are cool.
Yeah, they're great. Nah, look, like, I'm a little older, a little more mature. I got some kids now, and so the noon start Illinois game is a little less cobwebby than it used to be. A little less groggy.
You'll be sharper for that one.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be on my A game. I hope you're on your A game.
Oh, you know it.
We'll chat it up later.
Well, I look forward to your reporting coming live from Beaver Stadium. Of course, we'll have the BWI Live post-game show. Tom Hannafin is on assignment, so I'll be there with you holding down the fort after the game. And of course, can't overlook it. Tomorrow, Ryan Snyder joins the show to end the week on the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you then.